So in respect to decorative lighting, you work in the residential market primarily. I know you do other projects as well. How much demand is there for you personally, as your company, to specify decorative lighting?
Well, I think decorative lighting is one of those strange areas. We do work mostly residential and some hospitality projects, and there is always a demand for decorative lighting. Now, our approach to lighting design is to really conceal and hide all the light fittings unless we want them to be a feature. When we talk about decorative lighting, we're talking about features. And so it's so ingrained with the interior design and the architecture of the space that in the past I've been a little bit apprehensive about imposing my vision over that, because there are interior designers and architects and the clients who have opinions as well. And it's a very subjective choice. But we find we're being asked more and more, and we take a greater role on the decorative lighting within the design process. A lot of the time we're trying to work with the interior designers, and what we do is we explain to them, you tell us your design vision. If you have decorative fittings you can think about that you would like to use, then show them to us and we'll give you our feedback on the lighting around that and how it works. Is it actually going to be fit for purpose within the build? Is it actually going to function the way you want it to? And we understand how the light comes out of it, and then we can help support them. And most interior designers are very receptive to this. They are really happy to get our professional input on the light fittings that they're choosing to make sure that they're going to work. And I guess at the end, they want it to look amazing. They want the scheme to work. And if it's not performing correctly when it comes to the light, then it's going to let their interior design down. So they enjoy having that feedback and learning more about how they can create good decorative light fitting schemes, and we can get input on it.
That is interesting, because I know obviously there's a lot of good interior designers out there and architects, but they do follow trends where, back a previous interview that I made, is that balls on sticks seems to be quite something that's trending in the last few years anyway. Just very minimalist but very high glare, the sort of things that look maybe good until you turn them on, and then all of a sudden you can't comfortably use the space because you've got a great big source of glare, which is the product. And I guess that's where the light designer comes in, isn't it? Where they
exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's a case of disassociating the decorative stylist subjective element to how the light actually behaves within the space. And a lot of the time I'm there almost discounting any decorative fittings when it comes to the light contribution of the space, because what I would plan for is to dim everything right down. So that's a perfect example where you've got sort of globes of light. Those have massive glare, and you've got to control that, and the only way you can really control it is by dimming it. And so we're generally aiming to dim that to maybe 10%. Wow. And then at that point, what is it doing within the scheme? It's generally just a decorative feature. But if it's going to be used, say, over a dining room table, then at that point we're saying, right, well, you can have your decorative light, this fits within your scheme, but what we'll do is we'll provide an alternative light source to give you the task lighting onto the table. So we might add in a couple of recessed downlights to light down onto the table, tightly controlled beams of light, just giving you that illuminated surface, very focused to create a more intimate atmosphere. And then you can dim your decorative fitting and you don't have this clash in usage.
I suppose that is a thin line, isn't there, between the lighting design elements and the artistic interpretation and input of interior designers and architects. And I think that's where we cross that boundary, as it were, because we bring a technical acumen, hopefully, and but it is Also, there's also the question of the end user who maybe has got their heart set on something and isn't either a lighting designer, interior designer, or architect, but you somehow have to find a way of talking them out of an idea, or perhaps giving them an alternative which is similar. So is that something you come across?
I think that is definitely something that we come across, and we come across it a lot. One of the key principles that we work by is that we want our clients to be able to make an informed choice. I have been very loath to have clients where we get to a point and they don't understand what they're getting. They understandably get quite jittery when you're spending all their money, but they don't really know what they're getting. So what we want is our clients to know. We want them to be informed so they can actually make a choice. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to residential design, it's not your space. It is their space, and they do have a very big vested interest in how it's going to look, which is quite subjective. So what we find we have to do is we have to educate the client. And almost all the time, once we've done that, they understand our point of view. They understand why that might not be suitable, or why we have to add additional light sources within the space to compensate. And they will then accept our changes. But if you just go in and say no, a lot of people knee-jerk react to that and they don't understand why. So if we educate them, a lot of the time they embrace those changes. But there is some give and take. If they really love a light fitting, if they really want something within that space, then maybe you've got to accommodate it. It's something that we have to do. We're not the interior designer, we're not the client, and sometimes we have to compromise a little bit. I worry about what fittings are being used. I think you touched on a good point. Is it just something which is a trend? Is it a fashion? Or is it going to be a lasting, stylish fitting that you're going to put in, which is going to almost become a classic, or is stylish? It is timeless within the space.
I think that's a good point, actually. But I guess the common track that I've been experiencing, and other people experience, is the number of design iterations you can have. And as a business, you're trying to encompass that into some sort of a fee, I guess. I guess you just take it on the nose if it's considered, because you almost get the customers saying, why am I paying you for looking at pictures and sending me pictures of products? I just want the product that I want, and you can't give it to me. Do you ever come across that?
I think, well, ideally we get started very early on in the project. And then what I have built into our fee structure will be a certain amount of time for advising on those decorative fittings. A lot of the time we can plan very early for what they're going to be. We can ensure that the correct wiring is going to be in place, so that then we've got maximum flexibility, so we can pick whatever we want later on. And then it is just a case of a shopping exercise going on, finding a bunch of fittings and sending them to the client for them to say yes or no to, and we can get approval. If it's a key piece, so for example, if you're doing a triple height space, we're going to hang a pendant through that. Really, that should be considered as part of the concept design, because it's going to be intrinsic to the entire design. It's going to be a centerpiece. It's going to be defining light within the home. And so we want that design very early on, and it becomes part of the concept and initial design and detailing that out. I don't find it too difficult as long as you plan ahead a little bit. We normally try and weave a mood board of decorative fittings into our concept presentation, so we can feel out where the client is going with it. And then a lot of the time it's asking for them to contribute as well. If they've got an interior designer, we want to hear about what they want. And it's just about structuring that out within the fee,
I think
within your work process.
People sometimes treat these products as commodity products, where you can just go in and get them off a shelf, have a look at them, take them back. But so I find samples maybe difficult for something.
Oh, yeah. I would never. Yeah, samples are not really going to happen.
Really?
Half the time, the fittings, when it comes to decorative fittings, If you're looking at a wall light, which maybe you're going to have, because it's residential that we mainly work in, we might have 4 of them within the
Yeah.
project. No supplier is going to give us one as a sample for free to go and look at on site. It's about making a call and deciding what you're going to have before you can put it in the space. And I think that's partly experience, being able to make that decision without having to get samples. You can hopefully go to a showroom, but part of it is, one, making sure you've got the knowledge and the experience. So you've gone and seen this as a designer. You know whether or not it's going to be right within the space. You've looked at it at exhibitions or in showrooms. So you can make the decision whether or not it's going to be right for the space. And then it's also perhaps organizing visits to showrooms for the client to ensure that they're happy with it. It's very rare that we get samples to take to site, but interior designers are already doing this. Interior designers don't show up with samples of floor lamps or table lamps or pendants to site. They know already. They've specified and chosen it. They might have gone and looked at a showroom, but they're planning for fittings which are going to take 4 to 8 to 12 weeks to come on site. And so I think we really just need to step up as lighting designers and just say, right, this is what we're doing, and have the confidence to back our designs and our choices.
That's a brave man who says that. It's good. I think
it's a fine line between brave and overconfident.
Well, I do feel for our industry for that, because you have to almost be the lion in the room for something, because people need to be led, don't they? Because it's out of their comfort zone. Perhaps they've never encountered something, but in the same light, it's not like, well, it's not like light designers are paid mega bucks to do what they're doing, which is quite ironic sometimes, because you could be dealing with someone who is, if they're a very wealthy client, is really quite well informed and quite, I don't want to say power hungry, but you know that they're used to getting their own way and stuff. So it's interesting that.
Well, I think you make a very good point. People do need to. People might not have the knowledge. That is why we get paid to do lighting design, because if they knew how to do it, they'd probably have someone else doing it rather than us. Part of what they pay the fee for is to get our knowledge, and we have to deliver that. And sometimes you have to be a little bit forceful. You have to say, actually, this is the right choice. Put your foot down. A lot of it depends on the client relationship. One thing, and this is not just lighting designers, this is everyone within any creative industry. Part of what you have to do when you get a client is agreeing your fee, and they've got to agree to pay you a fair amount to have you in their employ to do the design. But also there is the matching of personalities, and sometimes you need to understand that actually you need to say no to a job because you're just going to clash. You're not going to be able to get through to your client that actually they need to do this. Maybe that client doesn't listen enough, and you need to be able to say, no, we're not going to work together well. Maybe I can recommend someone else who I think is a better fit for you, and be more firm on that. Because sometimes you get engaged with a job and there's just such a clash, or they don't want to listen, that you're not going to succeed on that project. And maybe that's a project you shouldn't be doing.
I think that's a very courageous way forward. I wish you good luck with that, because because let's face it, we all need the work, don't we? But well, I think if you can do that, you're very that's very professional, and I think
at the end of the day, sometimes you've got to be able to step up and say no, and say, we're not going to work together, it's not going to be the right fit. Doesn't mean you can't help them out. Find someone who might be, and people go away happy. But also the other thing is, if you do turn around and say that, they might change their mind and they might approach the project differently. There have been instances where I have turned down work and then they've adjusted their attitude towards it, and then it has been viable for us to take the project on. A lot of it comes down to experience though, and understanding. But you have to realize that sometimes as much as you'd love to have that project and have the cash in the bank, a lot of the time it can be much, much worse and take up 10 times as much of your time
You
than if you
prefer
were
to
doing a good project.
live a bit longer, perhaps.
Yes,
To extend your
I
life.
think I've been stressed enough in terrible projects in the past, so I try and learn my lesson and make sure that at least I can enjoy what I do and the client can enjoy it as well. And then at the end, when we're there commissioning and we're setting the lighting up and they're happy and we're sharing a glass of wine, we have a good end to the project.
I'll probably wrap it up there, unless you've got anything else you want to say, Marcus.
No, I just thank you for having me. It's fascinating to talk. And I think
pleasure.
we really are just sort of scratching the surface here. It's a massive topic, and it is decorative lighting as well. I think we as lighting designers have a strong role to play in that, and we should be stepping up and doing more because our knowledge is really strong and we need to influence people more when it comes to that environment. But also, when it comes to finding out about products, I think we've touched on some very important topics here.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much for your time. I'll bid you adieu.
Thank you.
And,